globally, the Dutch are recognized as some of the best in the world at dealing with a lot of the issues that we've been discussing, especially things like beneficial reuse. And so we went and found Dutchmen. Edgar. Just call him Dutch.
Okay, well, thank you for this nice opportunity to give a Dutch perspective about reuse of dredged materials using geotextile tubes. When I first started talking to Arcadis about Dredgefest, well, the first question, just like my question is, or was, what is this party about? Especially when I started studying this well, pretty academic dredge cycle, making me think, well, we have quite a profession. And actually it made me think about this beautiful piece of art from Bruce Nauman. He has an exhibition right now in Loma. And it took a while to, well, before it revealed the mystic truth to me, but well, hopefully in my presentation I will give you an insight, a perspective from the Netherlands. An introduction. Well, who am I? I'm Edgar Westerhof. This is the picture my father took when I was 4 years old. At that age, of course, everything that had to do with water and land was definitely a party to me. Now, 14 years later, and a couple of dredging projects further, well, I know it is a challenge. Well, the content and also the orientation in the Netherlands. I have an example from the Netherlands. Well, most of you probably have been in the Netherlands, so some basic orientation. This is where the Rhine comes into the Netherlands, the Rhine Delta. It flows to Rotterdam and it goes to Zwolle, the IJssel Delta. I will show a couple of pictures of these areas later on in my presentation. The presentation is about a context of geotextile tubes. I will give a project example and also some opportunities and challenges. Well, first of course, geotextile tubes, thinking about makes you think about a sandbag. Back in 1953, it provided basic protection when the dikes broke in the province of Zeeland, killing 1,800 people and well, making 100,000 people homeless in one night. And sandbags provided the one and only safety we could provide at that moment. But still, up till now, every city, every village along rivers or canals in the Netherlands has a pretty big collection of sandbags, and they are used every year. Well, dredging, of course, also has a relation with maintenance of waterways. The picture on the left top side is about agricultural dredging. This is how it's happening in the Netherlands for 350 years, I would say, where farmers have to cooperate and water boards take care of keeping the waterways clean. The other picture on the lower right side is dredging in the inner city of Amsterdam, and that comes with entirely different challenges, a lot of metal pikes that they have to get out of the water. And well, the main dredging, continuous dredging project in Rotterdam, and I will refer to that in the next slide. Because where do you bring, how do you ship your dredged materials? So if you are located either in Rotterdam or the IJssel Delta in the north of the Netherlands, that's not such a big question. We have these huge long-term storing facilities, then it's pretty easy to ship it to these facilities. And it looks beautiful from above, like the picture on the lower right side. It's well, almost a piece of art too, but it contains the most heavy contaminated material we have in the Netherlands. And it can store, well, you see the numbers, 130 million cubic yards of material is the depot size in close to Rotterdam, and it has a capacity for 50 more years to come. But if you are in the middle of the Netherlands and you have to ship it to either one of these facilities, it's getting a different question. And that's what you see in the big picture in the middle. It gives a lot of questions, political questions. No one really wants a facility like that in his backyard. So the project example that I would like to show is about a dredging project I managed in the Netherlands, in the city of Zutphen, where we faced the question, what do we do with our dredge? And of course that's a Euro question in Europe. I'll skip this one, but this gives some general background about the area where the project was part of. But I'll skip to the next one. So the project goal was to improve accessibility of the harbor, the main harbor of that industrial area. There was a direct economical reason to dredge the harbor, to dredge the entrance, and well, to deepen it to a level where ships could re-enter the harbor. At that time we had quite some small-scale experiences in the Netherlands how to reuse the material that what was dredged out of harbors or out of canals. And well, this gives some ideas. Dewatering is common practice. There was some basic experience with underwater application of dredge materials using geotextile tubes, but not at a scale that we were facing in our project. And that project, for your idea, is that red dot over there. 1/3 of all the water flowing through the Rhine is flowing through or along the project, and that's giving a really strong current that can be compared with the current you have in the East River, up to 5 miles an hour. So if you talk about restoring a shoreline, and that's the idea, the goal that we have with the dredge materials, then you have to come up with a strong solution. So it can be innovative, but it has to work. I mean, that's one of the things in the Netherlands. You can try whatever you want, more or less. Of course, you have 3 more minutes. Okay. You still have to study it thoroughly, and that's what's being summarized in this sheet. It took us 12 months to figure out what we were talking about and to come up with a solution where dredge was being reused. Well, this gives an idea of how you investigate the interaction between dredge materials and the dewatering of the material, because you have to dewater it before you can use it in a geotextile tube. But I think Tenkate Vicky will explain more about that, so I'll go to the next one. After studying it for 12 months, we were able to make this pretty easy drawing that was part of the tender procedure. But underneath this drawing was quite some knowledge summarized. So this is what we did. We made compartments. We filled them with geotextile tubes. These textile tubes were filled with dredge materials. At that time, 2008, 2009, contractors could fill up to 2 units at the same time. At this point, I think contractors can fill up to 8 geotextile tubes stretched out at the same time. So in the lower left picture over here, you see the dewatered material after only 3 days, and how it's finished with the local material. So if you, I'll skip this one. If you summarize the concept of using geotextile tubes, it's basically about creating a closed soil balance. You solve the dredge problem, you use the local material, and you don't have to bring in new clean material. So some pictures from well, in this area, Louisiana, where there are ideas about restoring or creating underwater structures. A little closer by Plum Beach, where a couple of years, or I think 2 years ago, but the Corps of Engineers probably have a better sense of that, almost destroyed the parkway, the infrastructure, wetland creation. It's just an outline of how you could reuse dredge materials in a geotextile tube. And the final picture on the lower left, that's, well, perhaps maybe also a Dutch idea. The multifunctional levee structure is being studied right now in the Netherlands. How you can use dredge materials as the core of a levee structure and make a bicycle lane on it. Or we saw a couple of other pictures when dredge were being used in bike lanes or sidewalks. It's just a way of, well, possibility of using it. Well, the conclusion, I think it creates new opportunities, reuse of dredge materials. It's, above all, it's a proven concept. And I also think that challenges can be turned into opportunities. If you connect several questions, you can come up with one solution. Thank you. That was my presentation.
Questions?
So I got a couple of questions. I don't know anything about the material. How permeable is it? Does it react with hydrocarbons? What's its thermal properties and how long does it last?
Well, to start with the last question, the fabric lasts forever. Well, that means more than 100 years, and that's a mighty long time. Your first questions were about
Permeability, seepage,
right.
transport across the membrane.
Right. Well, you have to study the interaction between the sediment and the kind of polymers that you are using. And I showed one picture of a hanging bag test. That's how it was being tested a couple of years ago. Right now there are pretty high-end facilities where you have a mixture and you can test it with a computer, and you know within a minute what kind of polymers you have to use, in what concentration, how it interacts with the sediment. So you will prevent clogging of the fabric, because that's not what you want. If you see, you could see it in one of the pictures, the dewatering. If the process is managed well by the contractor, clean water comes out of the geotube. That clean water has to be, we had to test it, so the water was being pumped in a compartment close to the geotube compartment, and we had to test it for oxygen, because you can't release water that doesn't contain any oxygen. So there's definitely a lot of testing involved in using a geotube.
Are these being used outside the Netherlands already, or not yet?
All over.
Yeah?
Yes. I think you will probably have more examples, I suppose. More questions?
Are these tubes being used in projects that are designed to prevent beach erosion? I think I've read something about that.
They are, yes.
The core uses them in design where they feel it's applicable, but it's not an exterior type. And I'm a biologist, so I'm not an engineer, so let me just throw that out there now. It's not an exterior. It's either a core of a groin or a T-groin sometimes. Sometimes they wrap rock around, depending on the type of rock going around, what's inside the material itself. Sometimes it's used as a building structure, like when we pump in berms, we actually use that for that. We use something like that for marsh islands. We actually use core logs in our geotech. The design for Plum Beach right now is having a Plum Beach groin field put in, but it will be replaced by a rock. But for that particular design, they're actually removing the geotech when it's done, because the material you're using doesn't have a 100-year life expectancy.
They're also used in remediation, both sediment remediation and lagoon closures.
Great, thanks very much, Edgar. I'm glad, oh, please, round of applause.